Ahoy hoy, and welcome to Players in Book bonus action, where we talk about the game, talk about DMing, and talk about playing Dungeons and Dragons. We were just now talking about how many Shakespearean and Edgar Allan Poe references are going to have already been and will be in this series for forever. Oh yes, we got to get that done.
Yes, we're getting it
Um,
right now.
but let's shoot. You know what? I'm going to shoot over to Jennifer first while you're working on that.
Yeah. Hi, I am Jen Kretschmer. You can find me on the interwebs as @DreamWisp or streaming on Twitch as DreamWispJen. I do all sorts of stuff on the interwebs. And today, oh no, I was going to do today. I'm playing Rivulet. Normally, I'm playing Rivulet, your friendly neighborhood tsunami druid. But today, I'm playing me myself. So, hi, happy Sunday.
Hi, Jen.
Hi.
Hi,
And I'm wearing a Hamlet t-shirt, which makes me happy.
Ooh. I have the cutest shirt that I got from the Atlanta Shakespeare Company, and it's got like little stick figures, like real rudimentary drawings of individuals acting out each of the shows. It's so cute. I need to dig it out.
Oh, amazing. Well, last week, I guess I've done Hamlet shirts 2 weeks in a row, because last week I did my Elsinore Fencing Company shirt. So
Nice.
it looks like we have the wrong code.
Yes, the code is being updated. It's actually in chat at the moment. And
is it Abed?
So the code for all of our community friends is Abed Ortstots.
That's interesting.
Yes. It's tots.
So there we go.
We got
Abed
tots.
Ortstots.
Is that a community reference? I don't
Well,
know.
Abed.
Sure, why not?
Are we a crossover with community?
What?
Not, but
Oh,
it would
please
be
don't
awesome
tell
if
me
we
I'm
were.
Chevy Chase.
I
am not that difficult to work with, am I?
I don't think we have a Chevy Chase. I think it's
Yeah.
everybody's just somebody else. I
We're
will
our own
say
extension of the community universe, if we're anything. But
I have a huge number of influences, but I can't deny that Community is definitely an influence on me, at least comedically. So,
it's an excellent show.
do we have? We're working on getting our captions going, and I still don't have a link.
You know what? I'm so used to like. Give me a sec. I'll have everybody's captions to him in one sec.
Is the stream still?
We didn't
showing
have the
wrong-
caption system working the last time we did the game, so.
Right,
Yeah.
and so the quote that I'm sorry, the code that we should be using is the Abed Ortstots, or is that the one that's not working?
No, that should be working.
Okay, so the Abed Ortstots is the quote that is the code that everyone should be. Oh, it's a bad code.
Okay,
it's a bad code. Do we have an alternate? Okay, we're working on it. We're working on a better code. Sorry, everybody.
Yeah, that's supposed to be valid.
That's what you have?
Another
Abed
one.
Ortstots?
Oh, you know what? They sent me 2 for the. It's actually going to be Benny, Sarah, Chap. Let's try that one because they sent me 2. So the first one may have expired. Let's try this.
And,
Can someone try that one for me and let me know if it works?
Yeah, just to set up our sequence of events here.
We're in the dice toss of community, and we landed on the wrong dice roll. So in the alternate bonus action episode.
If Benny
the other
Sarah,
code is the one that works.
If Benny Sarah Chap works,
it
didn't work.
They may also be trying the one on the screen. I just realized that there is one on the screen.
No, they're saying specifically Benny Sarah Chap doesn't work either.
Also isn't working. Okay.
All right. Well, in that case, I got nothing, y'all, because those are the 2 that they sent me for this week.
Code doesn't, screen doesn't work. Abed.
You know what?
Not Lauren's fault. Lauren is not the one in charge.
Yeah.
So yeah, they are working on a tough crew right now.
Probably
so
just little mix up. We'll
adjustments happening, and that's what happened over there probably. So
sorry, y'all.
Apologies.
The latest code I got from them, which is supposed to expire. Let's see, valid from 9/1. Oh, this is interesting. They auto expired it. because it says valid from 9/1, expires 8/31.
Oh, that would be an issue.
Okay, that's probably why.
Yeah,
I'm
okay.
sorry, y'all. I'll have to get with Idle Champions. And if you check out our Twitter, I will clear it with them to post the code on our Twitter for this week once we get an updated one. So I'm super sorry. Apologies. There's a ghost in the
Goblin,
machine.
is there a way to put up a disclaimer on the or a
Yes, I
message
can do
on
that.
the screen so we can let people know that there was a snag this week?
Yep, as soon as I figure out which overlay. Oh, God, don't tell me that's on the image itself.
We were talking a little bit about what the overarching. I'll talk a little bit about some stuff when you're working on all of the things that need to be fixed.
I appreciate the patience, y'all. You are being so sweet about this.
So Jennifer and I were talking about what quote best encapsulates like the whole of the campaign, and I had went with a quote from a Wordsworth poem, which is "She's a phantom of delight," which is and now I see with eyes serene the very pulse of the machine, a being breathing thoughtful breath, a traveler between life and death. And we'll get to Jennifer's input in a second because I think it's actually a really good one too. But the reason why I like that one is for a lot of reasons, because it doesn't immediately say dreams, but it certainly implies a little bit of it. And just the mention of the very pulse of the machine gives it that little, just the tiniest bit of a hint of science fiction which I very much like. But your suggestion was.
So my suggestion, based on what I know of this campaign, was Prospero and the Tempest, which is arguably, and this says a lot because if anyone who knows me knows what a Shakespeare nerd I am, this might be my favorite Shakespeare quote in the entirety of the canon. But it's "We are such stuff as dreams are made on, and our little life is rounded with a sleep," which it just so much of what would this storyline, especially after what we've learned in the last episode about the dreamer and dreams. Do we lose light? I don't know.
I think I did.
Did we lose what?
It is a technical difficulties episode. We are certainly a stream. Oh no.
Our power is like barely blinking. And it's
like
making my lights are losing power and then they're going back off.
Oh, okay.
I'm gonna leave them off for the moment. Maybe it's a
cool. Give it a minute.
I've got shadows.
We're dramatic.
We're just so
Sue's gonna just have dramatic lighting today. Yeah, so I just think that it so encapsulates what our campaign seems to be at this point in time. And yeah, and also it's a beautiful quote, and it's from a great speech too.
See, before we got started, I was gonna say my favorite go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say from a character who is so beautifully imperfect and deeply flawed, which a lot of people don't talk about when they talk about Prospero, and you know, that he's someone who by the end of the play is really just trying to be better.
See, I like Othello, but for completely different reasons, because Iago is my favorite character in
great character,
the Shakespearean
that is
canon.
A hard role to play.
Yeah.
I did that on What Streams May Come. I got to play Iago, and there were a couple lines that I felt awful saying.
Well,
he's such a good villain.
The only monologue I think from Shakespeare that I have memorized is Iago one. It's or soliloquy, I should say, but it's what is it? What say he that I play the villain when this advice is free I give and honest, probable to thinking, and indeed the course to win the more. I'm gonna do that. I kind of want to make this into the a D&D thing. Like if you guys turn on the play channel on the radio, and I can recite this, but I'll change it from the Moor to the dwarf. But indeed the course to win the more again. His soul is so enfettered to Desdemona's love that she may unmake, do what she list, even as her appetites play the god to his weak function. So how am I then a villain? I love that I love that whole thing.
Yeah.
How am I then a villain to counsel Cassio to this parallel course directly to his good? Like, he knows what he is.
Oh yeah.
That's my favorite thing about it.
All of Shakespeare's best villains know exactly what they are. I mean, that's Richard III coming out and going, "Hi, I'm the villain."
They're
Yeah.
very
Like
self-aware.
literally turns to the eye. The first time he
And-
meets you, he's like, "Hi, I'm gonna be the villain. Here's
Like-
the things I'm gonna do." and just-
Richard III is more open about it.
yeah.
Arguably, Iago is the main character of Othello. Like, I know Othello is like the title
Mhm.
character, but the character you're really following more than anything else is Iago's story.
I mean, the Julius Caesar sort of does a similar thing, but
Y'all check Zoom chat, please.
Oh, right.
I should be good on that.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't.
Um,
I'm gonna copy.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I mean, Iago's one of the great characters, but I also think Othello is such an incredible character
sure,
that I don't think you can pull. I think Julius Caesar you can kind of take away from Caesar because the other characters are much
Focus.
more interesting and
Yeah.
and
Totally
have much
broken.
more to do, but Othello, I think. is
Sure, yeah.
Still Othello's show, but Iago steals it. Like,
Yeah, I think that's fair. Like,
Big
I also, because again, Iago is my focus of like admiration for the writing in Shakespeare, and it's like I look at it, and I'm like, and this is an extremely cheap comparison to make, but he's like a prototypical, I don't know, like he's more force of nature almost than like true villain. Like a joke, well, Joker is kind of, like I said, it's a cheap comparison to make, but he's more of a Joker type to me than he is like any other sort of complex villain, because pretty much until the
No.
very end, almost everything he wants to get done happens the way he wants it to happen, with very little pushback from everybody else. Like, he gets some, obviously there's work to be done the entire time, but he always accomplishes what he's wanting, and he doesn't have I don't remember the exact quote from it, but the part where he goes basically like, and I'm not going to tell you really why I'm doing this. Maybe I'm doing it for this reason. Maybe I'm doing it for this reason. Maybe I'm doing it for this reason. Who cares? Maybe I'm just doing it because they let me do it.
I need a little train conductor hat.
Oh, really?
Thank you for the hype train, y'all.
Oh, we're on a hype train.
yes, thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think
I got to play one of my all-time favorite roles, which was Macbeth. I got to play the man himself, and that play has always been tied for my favorite. I am a massive Macbeth, and Much Ado is my all-time favorite.
Much Ado is Much
I
Ado is
love
up there
Much
for
Ado.
me too.
Beatrice is my dream role, like of any
So good.
role in theater. Beatrice. But I got to play Macbeth, and he's such a fascinating character because he starts out as this like, oh, he's okay, he's kind of cool, and then you just follow his descent into how power warps a person, and it's so fascinating how well Shakespeare captured that journey of the mind and was able to vocalize it. I don't know that there are many authors who've been able to capture the descent that well. But yeah, that was my big Shakespeare fan moment. I was like,
We could circle back around to Hamlet for a second.
oh yeah.
When I was in
Mhm.
high school, I wrote we had to write a paper about we had to pick a tragic hero from a Shakespearean play in our English class, and then write a 2 or 3 page paper on it. And I decided to be a contrarian and wrote King Claudius as a tragic hero.
There's a
Um,
case for that.
I feel like there is.
Yeah.
He definitely doesn't fit it 100%. But
Well, the real question is what kind of king was old
Yeah.
Hamlet, and that's
Exactly.
that
and he
forms-
doesn't my
whether-
like there's little hints that he was
Yeah.
not a good person or a good king.
Yeah.
I mean, like, he avenge me. That's the most important thing you could possibly do with your life. or you could maybe let your son move on. I'm
Yeah,
just
that's a
throwing
little
that out
dark,
there.
Dad.
depends. Well, it depends on. Oh gosh, this is a dangerous hole to go down
Yeah,
with me
right.
because I've spent more and more hours researching this play than any healthy human
Yeah.
should. But there's if you actually look at the context of the laws of that time,
Right. Yep.
um, then Gertrude and Claudius are absolutely villains because they've done the exact things within days to rob Hamlet of his inheritance. Like they have waited to the last possible second that they can pull the rug out from under him and make sure he doesn't get inheritance. It's really malicious. But
Yes, that real quick. Fuel called it. Jen playing Hamlet. Amazing.
I'm really proud of it. I
we're on a
worked
level
really
4 hype
hard.
train
It
too,
was
by
one
the
of the
way.
hardest things I've ever done. But yeah, you can check that out if you.
Where
if you
can
would
they
like.
find it, Jen?
They can find it. Let me find the link.
Okay.
I can get the link. Hang on. Where is the link?
I'm sorry, I totally just like completely derailed you. Katie has
okay.
not taken her ADHD medication today because it got too late in the day before she realized she hadn't taken it. So I'm a little all over the place. Y'all have fun with this.
I feel like we could probably talk about Shakespearean stuff and also let Jen talk about Shakespearean stuff
God.
mostly for several hours, which we
Well,
don't
but
have.
what we can do is we can tie this to characters and
Yeah.
storytelling in tabletop. Which, if once I get this, I will. I think there's stuff to
King
actually
Claudius. I think part of
say.
what Hamlet is, well, yeah, part of what makes Hamlet good is that King Claudius isn't a textbook clear villain, in the sense that, like, you look at some of the stuff he does and you're like, well, maybe it's just, I mean, like, he gives Hamlet a lot of rope, before he finally decides he's like, all right, I've got to deal with this in a final
honest,
sort of way.
Hamlet was not the best
No.
guy himself.
Mm-mm.
Look at how he treated the people around him.
Not good.
Kind
But
of a
that
douche.
makes it good. But King Claudius, that's what makes King Claudius, I think, if not a tragic hero, which I love making that argument, but if not a tragic hero, at least a very good villain, a compelling villain for the piece. Although I still think Hamlet's the villain of the piece, but that's neither here nor there. I think
that I disagree.
I
on,
bet.
But
that's a super hot take. So, but speaking of Hamlet, that was our quote for the episode 4, which is the first one that we'll be covering here. I actually do want to, because you left last time around right before we got to your dream sequence in the reactor. And I kind of did want to get your take on, like, what your reaction to that if you remember, that was over a month ago now. But if you do remember, like, what was your reaction when you ended up in front of the star dragon and the stars went out and the whole
oh
thing
gosh, I was shocked. I was confused.
It was so good.
Yeah. I just didn't know what was going on, so it was really figuring out what it all meant and what was happening. And yeah, I had no way to anticipate something like that happening, and then I was alone, and then weird stuff was happening, and there were stars and dragons and my mother's clothes coming at me. So yeah, I really had no idea how to interpret it.
The mother's clothes thing was an in the moment choice by me. I had definitely wanted to have something dreamlike come up to you, and my first thought was your mother. But then I thought about how, we talked a little bit about, like, some of the details around your mother, and I was like, well, rather than make her walk up and be all fuzzy, I was like, what if she's there but she's not there, like an empty void where one's mother should be.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna move everyone so everyone can see. Remember, anyone who didn't see it before can see the map. But yeah. So I did that, and I was like, okay. And then and then we did the second scene later, but we'll talk about that probably at some later point. But yeah, I had no. So I actually did talk to Katie a little bit about this specifically, but I had no way to guarantee that you, Jen, would be the one, or that Rivulet would be the one to access the gods interface. But I did a lot of work in the moment because a lot of that, I think we talked about this, a lot of that scene entirely was improvised on my part. Most of the details of how the reactor worked was, and the world building lore in the moment was built off of stuff you guys had said that I was like, okay, that sounds good. Let's build on that. And essentially let's yes and that. And then let's yes but this and go from there. But in that moment, I was like, okay, I've created this system and I want Rivulet to be the one to access the gods thing because that will open up an opportunity for lore to be dropped, for lack of a better way to put it. And the only way to do that is to really strongly incentivize the rest of the players to go do other things. So I'm like, we got a bard. Bards, I did not know for sure. A lot of people, I'll talk about this when it comes to DMing. My job isn't to put you on a track necessarily. My job is to do my best to stack the odds that you will choose to do the things that I want you to do. So one of the terminals needed illusion magic. You've got a bard. Surely the bard has an illusion spell.
And one.
One of the things needs and that was the most important part, making sure the bard wasn't the one to do the gods interface, because one, it's a social role, and our bard is an eloquence bard, which she would succeed on. I'd have to artificially set the DC high in order for you not to automatically succeed.
The lowest I can roll at this point is what, an 18, I think?
I think it's an 18 now. It was 17 then, but it's an 18 now.
I think it's an 18 now.
Yeah, because you upped your charisma by 2. But yeah, so I was like, okay. And then I knew you, Rivulet, you're the other charisma-based character. So if anyone's going to do the talking to the gods who isn't our eloquence bard, it's probably going to be you. And then everything else just kind of fell into place, thankfully. And then I was able, and then also I did wait to see if you were going to do that thing where, like, you're so curious that you just want to stay for a little bit longer and get a little bit more information. I dropped
Always.
I was like, hopefully I dropped enough like mysterious, questionable lines that you really want to get more information on.
Yeah.
And then just let you drive the scene, and then after enough time be like,
the biggest danger of throwing someone who wants to unlock the secrets of the universe into a place where you're getting hints of the larger universe that no one's ever seen is they're gonna want to go find out all of the things. So yeah, it absolutely was dangling the
I
carrot.
see the question.
Yes, I was going to point it out just so you
knew.
So
what was the inspiration for the almost literal Deus Ex Machina, by which Deus Ex Machina, let's pronounce that correctly, by which I mean having gods as the nuclear reactors of the world that came before? Okay, so when they walked into the reactor, all I knew for sure, I think I said this last time, but all I knew for sure was that the gods, we'd actually talked a little bit about the divine twin reactor idea. What was the inspiration for it? I love the intersection of technology and magic. I don't think that it is explored plenty. I'm not going to say it's not explored, but I don't feel like some of the deeper interactions are explored enough. You know, it's always the end result, not the source. Like you have the gun that fires magical blasts, but you don't. I never see anyone go back to the factory that manufactures the shells that fire the magical blasts. I'm sure there's fiction that does that probably, but it's not often. And I really like those interactions. So looking at a civilization that needs power, like the old Kasari Empire had billions in population. They were a world-spanning empire that controlled the entire world by their fall. Yeah, nuclear. Yes, it was basically a nuclear reactor.
Okay, I really like the hyper lurk tag on that emote.
And yeah, every effect needs a cause. And I feel like if you explore those things, the world building kind of does itself for you. Like, again, we just talked about like, look at the end result of what you have. You have a worldwide empire that needs power in a world of magic. Now, you can do things in a more simpler way, like the current empire, the current. God, I'm talking a lot, so if you guys want to interrupt, absolutely.
I'm listening.
Well,
This is interesting.
I want to bounce off of one thing that you said, which
ahead.
is the idea that world building will take care of itself if you really dig in and backtrack things. Because that's always been something as a DM that I've really liked to do. I've looked at, okay, well, if a fork is if the primary dining utensil is a fork, what does that tell you about the people who live there?
Absolutely.
It tells you a lot about what kind of food they eat. Tells you a lot about that they have hands with certain kinds of digits. It tells you a lot about that they need certain types of nutrition. Like that just that one item can tell you so much. And I mean, I guess this is kind of the core of Reveal-It's character too, which we talked about, the extrapolation, the Holmesian deduction of from one drop of water you should be able to deduct the oceans. But those ideas of like, if you can find one thing, you can discover so many pieces of the universe that you want to build. And I think you can go from the big ideas down, but you can also go from the small ideas up. And I think so often people miss that piece, and it's so valuable to do that in your stories and your worlds, because often that's where things start to fall apart when you actually pick at the world.
A lot of people think that their stories have to be big. That's another thing I've noticed, right? So we always end up with the giant nuclear reactor and all these other things. But I'm thinking of it from the perspective of like the average employees that go to work here every day. Like, what do they do? And one of them is, of course, Bigger Frog, and that's where he ends up. He was one of the workers that worked in the reactor. And then in a world of magic, like I said, I backtracked to it. I knew that the gods were trapped, and that the 7 gods had been created from belief after trapping the thousands of gods that lived in the old pantheons. And from that, I was like, well, what would I do if I had the access to that? And I'm like, what if I took 2 gods that really hated each other and made them fight? Rock'em Sock'em Robot style, but in a range.
I forgot what I was going to ask. Never mind. Go on.
Oh, that's fine. But yeah, no, it is a nuclear reactor, because I decided if they're going to have this, I needed to tie it into certain modern equivalents. And I think a nuclear reactor is a really good, it's a very good modern equivalent for Eldritch horror, for sure. We saw that when Chernobyl came out.
Yeah, you want one of the greatest horror things to watch, go watch the Chernobyl series. But also just be prepared that it's
dark.
It's rough. Upsetting.
It's rough, yeah.
Yeah, it is a hard watch.
Yeah, so without going into too much detail, the idea that you go to a place and that place is just inherently warped and dangerous, and take that over here and then take radiate. I'm sorry, what you about to say?
Oh, I just remembered my question, but finish your thought.
Okay. You have radiation.
Make a note, Katie.
I am, yeah.
You have that over here, and you have radiation over here. Those are the same things. They describe the same environment. You can just cross them, and no one will know the difference if your world allows for it. And thankfully, this world allows for a mixture of good technology and magic. Now, what were you about to say?
So you mentioned Bigger Frog was working in the reactor.
Yes.
Is that why he's bigger? Did the radiation trigger abnormal growth in him?
It's complicated.
Okay.
So originally I was just working off the idea that bullywugs and frogs of that type, sentient frog people, grow bigger as they age, period. But they have normal lifespans under normal circumstances. However, his pledge to protect the island is an Oath of the Ancients pledge.
Ah, nice.
At level 14, they become immortal.
Yeah.
So
that's cool.
Been around for forever. And because of that, he's just grown and grown.
Just keeps growing.
Nice.
But I do really love the idea of radiation. Part and parcel to that.
Maybe that's part of the magic of that oath, that particular oath, and the way it's
because it doesn't have to be it's Oath of the Ancients mechanically. The mechanics
But it
don't
can be
really matter too
flavored
much, but it
as,
can be
yeah,
flavored as exactly
as
what
being bound to that place because of
Yeah.
the duration of the exposure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not safe for Bigger Frog to go somewhere else or
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
I don't know.
Sid,
Siddhartha
that-
asked a really great,
Yeah, I'm about to
made a
read.
really great point
ahead.
about, thinking about how magical items and healing potions and things can make world building harder because you're trying to work against things. But the thing that I think a lot of people forget is when you're now moving into a place that's magical, we may be thinking about those things relative to our world's
Mhm.
versions of things.
Mhm.
But that doesn't mean that there aren't things in those worlds that those can't
For sure.
affect. So
In this world
You know,
specifically,
yeah,
that is addressed actually, because
Yeah.
their technology for a lot of things is ahead of where you would expect it to be, and then also behind in other ways. They have no germ theory because there's never been a need for it. And that's perfectly valid. I mean, plenty of you can look at countries today. Some of them are ahead in certain areas and then behind in other areas, but they only might even have access to certain areas because some guy in some country three countries over and 150 years ago came up with germ theory, and it was proven correct, and now they've got germ theory. They might not progress it very far, but they got it. In a world where there was never needed, why would anyone develop that particular set of technologies? But I'm sorry, I definitely interrupted you.
no, that's fine. But I think that's something that often people get hung up on, particularly in the last couple of years as people have talked about introducing things like accessibility into these worlds, which obviously has been something that's a particular interest of mine. But, I also think people don't necessarily do the follow through on the thought process of what those things can mean in a fantasy world. I like to point out that, when you talk about the architecture of these worlds, you're now needing architecture that works for a halfling and a half orc in the same place. And in that case, a ramp is going to be a much better version than stairs, because stairs are going to need to fit very small feet and very large feet and very small steps and very large steps. And it's really hard to design something that can accommodate both of those things, whereas a ramp can immediately accommodate both of those people.
Mhm.
So those are the types of things that I think people don't actually think through when you talk about a lot of this stuff and you get into kind of the accessibility front on it. And I know that's not the same as the healing potions, but they often come up in the same discussions and arguments.
Yeah, it's still the same sort of idea of, well, we can fix it, so why is it an issue anymore?
Right.
It's not
and
always
also
about
cases
fixing.
Yeah, exactly.
I do want to call back to something that I just thought of with Bigger Frog, and this is completely off topic and ridiculous, but fun fact, lobsters won't die from age. They die because they can't molt their shell anymore. That's what actually kills them. Once they lose the ability to molt their shell, they basically just crush themselves. So
I will reiterate my favorite way to come up with monsters is to watch nature documentaries and look into the strangest creatures on the planet.
that's good.
They are the greatest source of the coolest things. I mean, animals are so weird, and animals in extreme climates are even weirder.
Aquatic
It's
Feywild.
Yeah, Katie's referring to my pet setting that I've been working on for years and years is an aquatic Feywild. So I'm a marine biology nerd. I was very, very close to becoming a marine biologist for many years. I went to whale symposiums and learned all about circulation in whale tongues and the bone structures in dolphin fins. Like I'm a nerd.
Circulation in whale tongues? Is that
Yes, because you
unusual?
think about the cold, they have to have their mouths open so often that otherwise their tongues would freeze. So there has to be they have to have a certain type of circulation to keep their tongues warm.
I have never thought of that.
Right?
Wow.
It's wild.
I'm gonna have to consult with you at some point on this, because in this game I was intending on bringing about some oceanic Feywild shenanigans.
Oh, you have
Which
found
you guys-
the right person.
which you may have noticed because we had the Feywild getting dumped, all that water being dumped through the Feywild.
The irradiated water.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
aquatic Feywild is completely my thing because the real ocean is just so strange.
Wild.
I mean, we know less about the depths of the ocean than we do about a lot of space.
Yeah.
It's wild. So yeah, how did I get to this? So yeah, I'm a big marine biology nerd, and going to the ocean for ideas is really awesome. But whenever I'm creating monsters or regions or anything like that, I go straight to the Planet Earth documentaries or the what are the ocean ones called? Blue Planet, just any nature documentary. There are color ones that are really interesting.
Hey, that's
there
awesome.
you go. Yes, I come.
What was it in the
Come for
chat?
the
I'm
code,
sorry.
code
I
eight
don't-
for the whale
Come
tongue.
for the Idle Champions code. Stay to learn about whale tongues. You're welcome.
That is amazing.
So yeah, but one of my favorite facts is about because the ocean holds the oldest creatures on the planet, and there are a couple of different ways that they live that long, and one of them is the continual growth. It's
Real
very
quick
strange.
before I forget, because I forgot at the top here, we are going over we're moving maps and we're showing stuff. So I wanted to go over our credits for maps and stuff.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Cartography by Shane Peku. Cartography by Shane Peku. I don't have to say it out loud. It'll be in our credits, but I like to say it out loud in case something goes wrong with the credits.
You know what?
Cartography by
Honestly,
Shane Peku.
it's just nice to say it because
Yeah.
artists
Cartography
deserve
by-
recognition.
Yeah, for sure. Cartography by Shane Peku. Cartography by Shane Peku Sci-Fi. Maps by Luke Stratton. Maps by Eightfold Paper. Music by Tabletop Audio. And character tokens by Greek 46. Speaking of maps, I moved you guys over to the ship because I wanted to mention that those scrying runes that you marred off the bottom of both ships,
Yes.
those did not exist until you went looking for them.
Excellent. My paranoia pays off again.
You went looking for them, and I was like, that's a really, really good idea.
Mhm.
Definitely.
Trust no
Definitely.
item.
And so yeah, I was like, okay, yeah, they're there.
That's
Makes sense.
very much my DM style when I'm running stuff. Typically I write just the barest bones bullet point outline of my idea, things that need to be learned in game to figure out what's going on, and then I just follow the PCs, what they want to do, and I find ways to drop that information, and if they decide to ignore it, fine, I'll pull something else out of my ass. But it always amazes me the level of depth and prep that folks go to. I don't have that skill set.
And see, I envy people who don't over prep because I will prep for longer than my players will play the game, and that can be really exhausting.
I think it's amazing.
And then I don't use half of it, and then
Yeah, I do a lot of prep in the beginning,
Yeah.
and then I do also do prep as the game goes along. But most of my prep is in the beginning of setting up. I really love, my style has become create a base of operations.
Yeah.
That is extremely well fleshed out, that the players can just essentially sandbox in for as long as they'd like.
Yeah.
Talk to as many people as they'd like, go wherever they want to in
Mhm.
that sandbox, and then go from there on adventures that are bump my microphone, that are significantly more structured, that do involve that kind of structure, but also making sure that your players know that, because they can get used to the one style of play, and then it can be a bit of a shock to switch over to the other style of play. So making sure your
Sure.
players know that you know, hey, you guys are going on an adventure now. This will be plotted out to some degree.
Yeah.
You guys can. I always tell my players, like, you guys can go anywhere. You can decide, I don't want to go over there. We're not going to do that, and I will be fine with that. But if you're gonna go to the island, understand that I have certain bits prepared and certain bits won't be prepared.
We discovered in the other game that I'm playing in this setting, we discovered that there had been this God's Well under the town that we had been playing in for about a year and never knew.
Not just that, but a whole
There's a whole city
under
down
town.
there.
Like
That's awesome.
the map came with an underground version
Yeah.
originally. And so I was like, well, that's going to be there, and at some point you guys are going to go and look, and hopefully. And I just kept it to myself. I do let a lot of stuff, because I don't care about spoilers all that much.
Yeah.
But I did keep that to myself
There-
because I thought it would be interesting.
We learned about it when the world was breaking. So,
That's fair.
I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it's a good time to learn. Better to learn then than to not learn until it's too late. But
Yeah.
I learned from that Sumerian will build this huge network of things that you may not know, but every single thing matters. And it's a
Yeah.
lot of fun. It makes it
I
a very
remember.
fleshed out, breathing world.
My very first game that I DM'd, I think it was maybe like 5th or 6th session. I remember I understood from the way the question was phrased how this person had been playing D&D before, and I just realized it was completely antithetical to my methods of design, which was something along the lines of he actually asked me the same question I get every once in a while. How much of this was planned and how much of it was improvised? And I go, almost everything in that scene was improvised. And the player said, "Oh, so it doesn't matter."
No, wrong. Incorrect.
And I'm like, I in my back of my mind, I'm like, what games have you been playing?
See, that's what makes
Incorrect.
me sad, because they learned that from somewhere.
Sure, yeah.
Someone taught them that,
Yeah.
and that makes
Yeah.
me sad.
I mean, I think about that because I started with second edition, I've been playing for more than 20 years, and
Mhm.
the old adventures used to be 28 pages. They
Mhm.
were 28 pages consistently. That's what the adventures that were published were. It's a 28 pager. Do you have one handy, Goblin? Because I only have, I think, box sets within reach. But they were little pamphlets. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I've seen them.
They
yeah.
were those. So anyone who, like, compare that with now when you're getting hundreds and hundreds of pages of material in a pre-written adventure, if you're doing someone else's, if you're doing an official adventure or a third-party creator adventure,
Mhm.
it's a very different type of prep and a different type of experience with the world. And some of them, like if you look at the original Ravenloft, like the great starts with a C. It's not great conjugation. Come on, brain. The Great Conjunction set. It's 6 adventures that weren't originally supposed to go together, and then they kind of went, we're gonna actually, like halfway through the series, they're like, we're gonna make these make sense together. And then they sort of half make sense together, kind of, maybe ish.
That wasn't me.
But those together, even all together, it still is less than half of one of the modern adventure books.
Mhm.
So you think about that level of material and how much DMs were working on, and also what was in those adventures was very different. And I think it's worth kind of experiencing those different types of prep and seeing how different types of prep benefit DMing styles
Yeah.
and approaches. You know, when I really started writing adventures, and then when I was writing for Candlekeep, and then the subsequent stuff, but especially writing for Candlekeep, trying to think about how to write an adventure for everyone to play versus my home group to play.
Mhm.
It's a completely different style of thinking about an adventure and a prep, and having to run through what kinds of every possible configuration of group, and how many magic users, anywhere ranging from none to all, alignments and attitudes towards the world ranging from an all evil party to an all good party who's very chaos to law. Like, those are all things you have to run through, and it's a really different type of prep, trying to create something that works for all of those different configurations of parties versus your home party. So in that, when I started doing that, I really was so grateful for prepping for a home game where you just kind of can do whatever.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there was also some stuff that I learned from that about how to prep a home game, because that ended up being less when I looked at my final material, I was like, this is less prep than I would do for my own game with this material, which was really fun.
Yeah.
With
But
this game, I
there were
go ahead.
sorry, before, two things I really quickly wanted to point out. Buzz Lightyear said something that I think is really interesting, which is that lately they've picked a beginning and an end and let the players make the choices to shape the world within it. And I think that's a really, really awesome approach, and particularly for people who are doing streamed games or are interested in doing on stream stuff. I think especially if you're doing like a mini series run, the more structured stuff where you have to get from a certain place to a certain place by
Very
the end,
different style, yeah.
and where you're thinking about episodes and you need a beginning, middle, and end. I don't think there's anything wrong with giving those kinds of points to a group, because it's not scripting the story. I know there are people who will fight me on this, and this may be a hot take, but like, and not everything I've done does this, but I do think that giving those goalposts to make sure you're getting those points can help sort of steer things. And again, it's like running it's the same as running a pre-written adventure. You're trying to just hit here, and here, but everywhere else is jazz, you know.
My writing experience really started from LARPs. And when you're in a LARP setting, it's different from a tabletop because there are physical limitations that you have to take into account. And so that I credit that with teaching me how to react in the moment to what is happening with the players and adjust as needed to accommodate that group and those players. I don't think I could ever write for a publication like Jen has. I don't have that organizational ability and the ability to sort of pull myself out of my immediate setting to see beyond the instant I'm in, if that makes sense. But same thing, Buzz. I very much put the bullet points, give them what they need, however they come by it, and if they don't want to do it, okay, fine, let's go down this other road. What do y'all want to do?
It's also really fun to have people say, I know where I'm going to end up. I have no idea how I get there.
How I get there, yeah.
and saying you're going to end up in this place, you just have to figure out how that happens.
It's like going on a kick-ass road trip.
Yeah, or it's like my favorite form of cinematic storytelling is stuff that's a full circle kind of movie where you start and end in the same place.
Yeah.
And the whole movie is about how you get there. So I feel like when you can accomplish that in a tabletop game, it's very rare to be able to really do that. But it's so interesting when you get to actually pull that off.
Yeah.
I was actually going to say, with regards to your party specifically, going back to what you were talking about of designing adventures for different kinds of parties. You talked about like the difference between evil and good, or lawful and chaotic. A good practical description of that would be you've got to design an adventure for a party who's going to kill everything and fight everything and ambush everyone without ever speaking to anybody, because that's going to happen. And you also have to design the adventure for the people who will not fight anything. They will only speak, and everybody in between, and the people who like to do sneaky stuff, to sneak around and all the other things. When we were first coming around to playing our game, I didn't know what kind of party you guys were going to be originally. Until we ran our like little I like to do little short sessions before the game truly starts, sometimes alone with a player, and then also a little bit of stuff with the players together to get both to get the players a good sense of their own characters, to get the players a good sense of each other's characters, and to get a good sense, and me to get a good sense of what kind of party they are.
Yeah.
And I set up a character that I was sure you guys were gonna hate. A spoiled brat who is a coward that leaves you to die. And she was intended originally to be a sort of soft possible villain or at least a companion to the villain on the island in the Pirates deal. And that was Abelina. But you guys immediately entered into God, what's the word I'm looking for here? I, uh, Caretaker mode, for lack of a better way to put it.
Yeah.
Empathy
Supportive.
mode. That's the word.
Empathy,
That's
yeah.
the word. Empathy mode. That was the word I was looking for the entire time. You guys immediately went into empathy mode and were like, it's fine. This is your first time out here. Of course this is going to happen. Nobody thinks any less of you for this. You're a good person. You just had a bad day. And I was like, oh, okay. I know what you guys are.
I seem to recall yelling at the teacher too.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. And I was like,
There
I
was
know
a
what
little
you
bit
guys
of how dare you put us in this circumstance. You're tasked with caring for us.
I remember.
Of course, it was all a
he
trick
said something,
and
and I was like,
fake,
well,
but-
"Isn't it your job to teach?" It was just like,
Of course,
oh,
it was all a test, but yeah.
I may have gotten a little too snippy there.
Yeah, we introduced these guys to some fake sirens, bad sirens too,
No, awful. Yeah.
and solely as a test to see how they would react, and
Which we promptly discovered were fake sirens because we came from places where there were real sirens. So
yeah,
We cheated.
but yeah, it was one of
wasn't
those things. I was
cheating.
like,
It was knowing our
this
I-
academy,
homelands.
you've probably figured this out by now. The academy you're going to does not take as dim a view on cheating as you would expect.
I've picked up on that. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're very laissez-faire with the rules.
You're
I've noticed.
you're training to be adventurers,
Mhm.
not to be some accountant in a tower somewhere.
Yeah.
You guys are training to be adventurers, and they focus your learning on that. A lot of what they do is playful, but it's there for a purpose to give you guys the chances to. I'm talking about it like it's an extremely important school or whatever, but in my mind, I've got this developed as to what their purposes are. And like they want you to be able to improvise.
Mhm.
Following the rules is how you get killed in their minds.
I love that.
Improvise.
Yeah,
And like, of course, there have to be some rules,
sure.
but learning when to break them and bend them.
It almost feels more like structure than rules.
Sure.
Because
yeah.
the impression I've gotten is if you can justify it, they're gonna listen.
And but yeah, I saw your guys' party acting extremely empathetic, and I was like, okay, they're bully hunters. That's how I can incentivize them to do anything.
There are more
So-
guidelines, really.
When you guys
Fool,
went to the island,
Fool, that was my thought too. Fool says now I need to create an adventuring accountant, and I immediately was thinking the same thing.
for
I'm like,
sure.
I need the accountant in the tower to suddenly be thrust into
Yeah.
being the adventurer. Like there's
That's
a
a-
great
That's adorable.
story
I love
there.
that.
That's a full-on hero's journey style story.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah,
I'm here for
Um,
it.
I mean that's a level 1 character.
Mm-hmm.
And when you guys went to the island, like I made it so that the pirates were being slightly bullying towards the bullywugs. I also love the idea of bullywugs, just the word bully.
I
like-
love
I like
bullywugs.
wordplay.
They're so wonderful.
They're bullying bullywugs, which I thought was funny. And that gave you guys, that was all you guys needed. That was the only incentive you needed to continue on the adventure in the directions I wanted.
Yeah.
When we met Sim, when like one of our first conversations, I was like, we're gonna you give us anything and we're gonna find a way to turn it into something. Like
Mhm.
anything you put in front of us, this particular group will find a way to create shenanigans or tear your heart out. It's gonna be one of the two. Like we will be shenaniganing or we will be making people cry.
Yeah.
And those are kind of the options that we will come across
Why not?
knowing this party. And so far that's pretty much been
Pretty
right.
much. That and philosophy, which
And
Oh, and
so much
philosophy.
philosophy.
Well, so philosophy all came out of conversations we had about the setting and that it was Spelljammer like in some ways. And also when we were talking about my character concept and I sort of said, can it be Sherlock Holmes but philosophy? And
yeah.
I kept going through these traits and kept coming back to like Sherlock Holmes and House, which are the same essential character, but slight differences in
Yeah.
demeanor.
I
But I
remember we were
didn't want to be House as I
I
didn't want
remember
to
we
be
were
that
talking about
kind
your
of.
character. You'd brought up Holmes before, and then you went on to describe like a whole series of character traits, and I was like, you're just describing House.
And
then
yeah,
and then
we-
and then
we
and then I was
just
like,
kept-
and I was like, wait, well, that's just Holmes. So we're back where we
but
started.
it's and I kept saying, but I don't want to be
Yep.
this thing, and then we kept just circling back to it. And I was like, well, but I keep describing it, so I guess I'm that.
Yeah.
Or you ended up describing like 3 or 4 variants on Holmes.
Yeah,
that
I
were all
just kept describing different versions of Sherlock Holmes while trying to get away from it, because I knew I was playing a druid, and I knew I wanted to do something that wasn't, I didn't want to be the rogue archetype built on this. I didn't want to go that way. And druids aren't really built to be investigators like that. So I wanted to take it in a more route and do some other goodies with it. But yeah. And then as soon as we got into that first conversation where philosophy started kicking off, I was like, oh, this is who this is. This is who this is.
I remember when that happened and you said something along the lines. I think it may have been after the session. I can't remember if it was in or after, but you said something like, Sumerian's never going to bring up philosophy again.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know so much about that.
Yeah. I was like, oh, this may cause trouble. Diving this deep, but it's interesting. I mean, to get to a lot of campaigns don't go into those ideas. And I think when you dig into, like, one of my favorite things so far was talking about the ethics of summoning. And that, I think that's something that a lot of people don't consider with this stuff. And if you're going to take these characters as people and not just numbers on a page, or not just sort of one-dimensional characters, you have to start thinking about things that are on a more ethical level about their world.
That was such an interesting conversation, because I felt like Dominique is of a very different mindset because of her life leading up to this. And sitting there, when she's sitting there listening to this, it was very eye-opening for her, because she was realizing where her prejudices are falling in line with the things that she has a problem with, if that makes sense. Like, she's realizing it's almost like the looking glass was turned onto herself in her mind, and she was like, oh, wait, shit, I never considered that. And it was a neat kind of eye-opening moment. And I love the fact that we're having these conversations in the game that I don't know that I've ever had in a game before. The ethics of summoning, that's never come up. It fascinates me. It's a very intellectual approach, and I love it.
I hadn't. I'll be completely honest with you. I like to think of my worlds as deep and real places, but the ethics of summoning was not something that I had considered when I opened up that class for you guys.
Yeah.
I always like to play, I think in that one scene, I was fairly quiet and let you guys have your conversations on your own. You guys went back and forth mostly amongst just player conversation.
Fuel, your band.
What happened?
Fuel made a pun. I banned them.
What was the pun?
Never put the cart
Never
before
put the
the
cart
horse.
before the horse.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
All right. Not that we haven't heard it before, but that
Yes,
is
but you're
excellent.
banned.
No, it wasn't something that I had considered. So when you guys started talking about it, I was like, well, now I need to create a framework for this at some future point. Just the important part is that I just try to listen to what you guys talk about and what you guys find important in the game. And then like I have a pretty good memory for the stuff you guys say. So I just make a mental note and then be like, all right, that's something I need to consider for the future. But like we were talking about your character. I think your character can act as a very good foil, Katie, to the rest of the party, because I feel like fundamentally, even if the rest of the party is a little bit gray in certain areas, your character, and I don't think you probably, if you object to me saying so,
No,
I
go ahead.
don't think you would, is selfish
Oh yeah, 100%.
for sure. To a degree that is noticeable.
Yeah.
Like it's not like a little bit like some characters are, but like to a degree that's a core. I'd say it's a core fundamental trait of the character.
Yes.
Which allows for people like Furlos and Essequa, who's a lot more neutral, I think.
Yeah.
And of course Rivulet, thinking about not necessarily Rivulet's always on the intellectual side of morality.
Riv wants every piece of the argument
Mhm.
before there's any
Right.
judgment, and
sure.
often there isn't a judgment. It's just establishing the pieces, which I think can be really risky.
It's almost like she wants to understand more than she's
Right.
trying to judge.
Exactly.
Dominique
Which
is
she's a true neutral, so
Yeah.
that's why.
Dominique. Wait, I'm trying to remember. Brain's not wanting to work. Which one is the id or ego? Which one is the one that's like is it the ego that is purely about self? Like,
Yes.
Yeah. Dominique is your ego of the group.
Yeah.
I feel like, whereas we have three ids essentially in different ways, tempering that,
Hmm.
which we haven't fully come around. Because we've only had 7 episodes so far.
Yeah.
We haven't fully come around to seeing these interactions fully play out. Plus, you guys haven't truly been put in any real danger yet.
Yeah.
Like,
We woke up in a
contextually,
Kraken, but
you've been in danger.
yeah.
Mechanically, I don't think you've been in danger yet. There's been no points where mechanically I think you guys were actually at risk of dying.
I think part of it is also we've been in pressure situations, but we haven't really been in one where there was a clear and present danger to anyone outside of ourselves.
Your dangers have all been big.
They have, but it's only really been
Right.
affecting us. I think once we encounter
Like the reactor
something-
going off is a big deal for the world.
Well, it is. But what I'm saying is, like, we haven't seen consequence, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. And I think that once we see that, once we have a moment where our action or inaction creates something monumental, I think that's going to be a really telling moment for our emotions as individuals and our emotion as a group.
One
So-
thing I talk about to my players is that whilst I heavily incentivize role play solutions to pretty much every problem if you can, if you do get into combat, and I think Katie, being in another game of mine for a year now, you probably fully understand this. When you get into combat, it is vicious.
Yes.
It is very hard, generally. Now,
Y'all,
your first
I
few
cannot even
encounters,
tell you, Mr. Fingers.
that was, again, you guys just roll poorly in that game. I don't know what
Oh,
to tell
we
you.
almost got TPK'd hard. It was bad.
And it was fully on your rolls. Like, I mean, I'm sitting here going, please stop this. And then
Yeah.
like I'm rolling for the enemy and these rolling natural 20s. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh no.
Like, I'm
no.
tucked down. I'm the healer. I'm tucked down behind a railing trying to figure out how I can heal the party because I think we had one person up at the end.
Yeah, it was something
Yeah,
like
it was.
that.
And we
Yes.
bonded through that.
Yeah, which I think helps. Like we talk
Yeah.
about, like that's how I think being truly tested, seeing you guys like truly having to put your morals. it's Rivulet's character is very much about the like, well, I want to have every piece of information first before I make a decision. But when the bullets come in your way, you don't get to have every piece of information. You kind of have to make those snap decisions. I think we'll get into more of that probably with the adventure that you guys are coming up on.
Mm-hmm.
Because the first adventure I gave you guys not a pass necessarily on the combats, but I was still feeling you guys out.
Yeah.
As a party.
Yeah.
So I was definitely a little bit like
I mean, we've had what, 2?
2. I think it's
Yeah.
been 2.
Yeah.
Well, and then the class. The classroom.
And the class.
And the
yeah.
classroom combat.
Dude,
yeah.
I was just trying
Which-
to hide. I did find it interesting though, that everybody's reactions in that class was really interesting to me because Dominique's first instinct was to run and hide.
Mm-hmm.
Furlos was instantly like, okay, well, this is going to happen. Let me assess the situation. That one needs to go down. And then you had Rivulet, who was just
Highly
frighteningly
technical,
tactical.
and very yeah,
Yeah.
highly technical and very tactical.
Yeah.
It was another opportunity for me to see you guys in action as
Mhm.
well, to get a sense of what you guys were going to do in other combats later on down the line. But yeah,
I
no,
will say, other combats will probably go very differently, though. Because,
we'll see how they go. Like, I want to see how everyone reacts. Like, we're gonna not, I'm not gonna immediately drop you guys against like extremely difficult fights necessarily, but it's gonna
necessarily,
ramp up in difficulty. Well, I think sometimes the shock to the system can be useful. uh
I would agree. Yeah.
as
I
long as
have had
everyone's not.
games where
Yeah,
we got our asses handed to us,
right.
and that was kind of a
As long as it's
catalyst
as long as
for.
it's well telegraphed. I know
Yeah.
those two things might not seem like they, but like as long as it's like well telegraphed, this is not going to be easy, and then it's not easy.
Yeah.
I think we can go from there. But you
So we're
guys
dropping
went.
the school out of the sky next game, right? That's the
I
plan,
mean,
right?
is that what you want to do? You can do it.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you know
Let it.
what? I wasn't there, was I? Did I see
Oh,
that?
that's. You
No,
were not at. You were
I
not at the
wasn't
thing.
there.
No. Yeah.
Ooh.
Um. But yeah, you guys can have the school join the rest of the city in the sea. Um.
Come
Which
to
is another.
Russia.
Which is another. Well, no. Avalon
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
We talked about this a little bit with the backstory, and I don't feel like it's too much of a spoilery thing for an audience to know. I mean, this is just lore.
Hmm.
Avalon is a city like Brescia. Brescia is this big Atlantis-like underwater city with a shield over it to keep the air in, um, and probably magical ways to recycle that air so that everyone doesn't suffocate. But that's neither here nor there. With Avalon, they were a similar city. Both of those cities were originally floating in the air, and Brescia had a controlled landing after they lost power, and then and their shield is actually, by the way, their shield is powered by the same power plant that you guys reset for 30
Oh,
seconds.
good.
Um, so yeah, it
Oh,
did have a battery backup, so for the 30
okay.
seconds it was off, you didn't kill everyone in Brescia. But
I got a little nervous for a second there.
Avalon, on the other hand, for reasons that are unknown, sank into the sea and everyone died.
Hmm.
And the Avalon that you guys know of as a sort of archipelago, no, it's what's the word? A lagoon. Um, Above it is just the upper parts of the city, the tallest of tall buildings that have grown coral reefs, and then dirt has eventually, or not dirt, sand has eventually formed on top of it to give it a
So
little
they've
bit,
got green roofs now, is what I'm hearing.
something along those
Yeah.
lines. But yeah, so the only part of Avalon that is still floating is the magic school. The rest of it all sank to the bottom.
It's cool.
But you guys went to the docks, and this is a fun story. So, Dominique, I was telling you about this,
Yeah.
because you were really trying to figure out how did they know immediately when you guys got in town that, yeah, and I was like, it's because the dude that was running the the admissions office was actually just a pirate in disguise. The actual admissions guy is tied up in a sack in the back of the dock master's place.
Yeah.
Um,
That made me
yeah.
feel a lot better because I was so confused. I was so confused.
Yeah, he just reported immediately to us. He was like, "Hey, one of our ships just showed up.
Yep. I'm sure it's fine. It'll be fine.
Looks like some students are in charge. What do you want me to do?" Okay,
So
I'll leave.
I have a new end goal. I want to be the pirate captain queen.
Oh,
I want to run the pirates.
I've got some fun ideas for how the pirates are gonna go.
All
I
right.
really do. Although I think Essequa definitely wants to be a, not Essequa,
Yeah,
Lynn's
I don't want to
character.
be. I don't want to be a good guy
Carlos.
captain. I want to
Carlos.
be the captain of the bad guys to make sure they're not too bad.
That's fair. That's fair. Well, you're going to have to beat an adult black dragon in single combat.
I'm sure
for
it's fine.
that.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking about that. The crypto bro black dragon that I've been talking about multiple times
Oh,
was finally
yuck.
out.
Just the
You know what I'm
worst.
talking about,
Black
right?
dragons
Yeah.
are bad enough.
Yeah, they are.
But you just like made it so much worse.
But I was talking
see
with
the
Katie before you got on about the natural synergy of a pirate king and a dragon wanting a horde.
Yeah.
It's
that
kind of obnoxious how well it works.
And I've like never seen it in fiction before, but we're gonna have one, I'm pretty sure, at some point, because they are looking for a new leader, and they're gonna have a nice little war. And then there's this dragon just gonna be floating around. I think he's probably gonna. None of these things are guaranteed. You guys can interfere and stop them from happening, but I feel like that's the direction things are gonna start going. Because
there's a type of dragon we created on one of my streams. They call the Nope Dragon, and it just
No.
nopes out of there. And that I would have a Nope Dragon fight your Black Dragon crypto bro. It looks at it, it goes nope.
I'm wary of like what voice. I kind of want to do the Snake Plissken voice from The Simpsons.
Oh God.
And be like, Cha, you guys are
Yes.
gonna have to give me all of your gold.
I hate this so much. I love it.
So again, I'm gonna give, this is a piece of my world lore as a gift from my home DM Jose Molina. Every dragon cultist in my world is a surfer dude bro cosplayer, dragon cosplayer, and they will show up in like duct taped together dragon cultist garb, like they are cosplaying a dragon at a Comic-Con. And they will say, "Hey man, have you heard about the dragon? Like,
oh my god,
bro, have you heard about the dragon? Like, bro." And I played some Kobold Dragon cultists recently for the Girl Scouts that I run a game for, the 12 and 13-year-old Girl Scouts, and I don't know why I had any other characters in my campaign, because they just immediately, those became the absolute favorites of the campaign. But that is the legacy. So yes, Jose gave me those characters, and they now forever, the Cult of the Dragon is surfer dudes in terrible dragon cosplay.
If you want your character to be forgetful, don't give them a distinctive, noticeable, and good voice. Because your players will always attack, like with the Frog and a Wizard Hat, which I thought was just going to be like a one scene wonder, and you guys are like, no,
never.
Oh, I can't. I'm not going to do the Jimmy Stewart right now.
Oh, why not? You don't want to do the Jimmy?
Well, I'm also, by the way, he's not a wizard. You guys are going to learn this in the very next session, because he's going to be rooming with you guys. He's actually a sorcerer. He's a divine soul sorcerer.
Oh no, we talked about, was that?
Yeah, I think we might have talked about it a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's actually a divine soul sorcerer who just thinks he's a wizard. He has a book that is completely useless to him. That he's just like, I'm a wizard, right? But yeah, so he's gonna be the guy that takes up your fifth bed in your room, I guess, for lack of a better way to put it. But yeah, it's gonna be interesting, because I think next session for sure he'll definitely be on board and able to actually be in the dorms with the rest of you guys. Let's
Sam,
talk
can
a
you
little
see the
bit-
screen? Can you see the stream screen?
I can't. I've got it. I turned my other computer off in case it was causing the power outage.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Lurking Rider, yes, please do that. A dragon cult that's Mean Girls Are Clueless. I love it.
Yes.
I love it so much. So much.
I need that.
What am I missing? What am I missing from chat?
Lurking Rider said, now I want to create a rival dragon cult that's basically Mean Girls / Clueless.
Oh, nice.
I love this idea.
It's just the popular girl crowd
The
dragon
plastics.
cult.
That is
The
interesting.
plastics.
Well,
you could do that. You could do that as chromatics versus metallics.
I want to say real quick, I've been concerned, because I do want I think we've been okay so far, but I've been concerned about going too comedic with I know there's, you gotta, but I've been a little concerned with like trying to make things too funny at their base.
Yeah.
So I don't know
I don't think that
I think-
inhibits deeper meaning. I think
And I
that-
also think that when you're doing a long-term stream, especially one
Mhm.
where we know there are wars and things,
Yes,
set up the comedy now because we know
Mhm.
we're going to hit the tragedy.
for
And
sure.
setting the contrast of the two ends up
Yeah.
like amplifying the tragedy when it hits, and also gives the relief of coming back to the comedy.
I'm probably being
But
overly sensitive.
and for a stream, I think
Oh, for
it's
sure. Yeah.
entertaining, and
Mhm.
Yeah.
you want it to be fun. Like, no one wants to tune in for Grimdark every week. Like, there's enough Grimdark
Oh,
if you just look at your phone. And
absolutely. That part's
so
true.
so I think keeping the comedy, because we know we're gonna have to go into the tragedy and play
Mhm.
that.
Grimdark gets really wearing on players
Yes.
too.
For sure. I say
Um,
this about not just games.
Yeah.
I find and I don't know if this is necessarily true. It may have just been the fiction I was consuming prior to 2000
Mhm.
or mid 2000-ish. But ever since like the mid 2000s, we had a reversal where it used to be like everybody got it almost all the time. Everyone got a happy ending. There were exceptions where the stories ended on a downer note.
Mhm.
And then somewhere in the mid 2000s, we switched up where it seems like every good story or every good series, every good movie that I've watched has some form of like a really downer ending
Yeah.
that it gets exhausting. One of the things I remember most about playing Cyberpunk 2077, and I 100%ed the core game of that,
Mhm.
is that it is such a fucking bummer.
Yeah.
Everyone that you try to help ends up worse by the end of the game. Everything is horrible for everyone.
That sounds
And
awful.
and and
Like,
it's well written. I would
Yeah.
argue in many places it's very well written. The world is amazingly beautiful.
I shouldn't
But
say it sounds
it's-
awful. It sounds
Yeah.
very difficult to process.
It is. And at some point I'm just like, every time I would take a new mission for someone to be like, well, I wonder how this guy's life's gonna get fucked up.
Yeah.
Because it was never a good thing that would
Well,
happen to anybody.
and you need to keep the reasons. I always feel like this gets lost in games, and I always try and remind people of this, which is like, if you don't have a world that's worth fighting for, you're not
Mhm.
going to want to fight for the world.
Yeah.
So you have to have a world where there's love and light and laughter and comedy and hope, because otherwise, why are you fighting to save it when there's a world where all there is tragedy and trauma and like,
To some degree.
When everything
To some degree, I like to say that okay, so a lot of works do this, especially the super grim dark and like deeply disturbingly dark stuff. They do this thing where they'll go kind of like they'll give you these little moments of happiness, and that's great in the middle of a story.
Mhm.
But so few of them, like those moments of happiness are very temporary
Yeah.
because you've seen this fiction before.
Yeah.
And I just need more stories that give me like I don't need to go into everything I watch with the expectation that it's going to turn out poorly for everybody.
Yeah.
I'd like to go in not knowing. I'd
right.
I'd like to go in like, is this going to be bad? Is this going to... They think they're doing because they used to be a subversion. It used to be a subversion,
Mhm.
and
Right.
people still think they're subverting expectations by having a downer ending. But these days,
Not everything
people-
can be Empire Strikes Back, people.
yeah, these days
Look,
most
Hope
people
and
are-
Joy are punk. They are.
Yeah.
And
today,
like,
yeah, for sure.
I mean, it's why, like, I don't know. I mean, when you talk about fiction, Star Trek is going to give you the hope,
Mhm.
whereas
Well, old Star Trek. I don't know about new Star Trek as much.
I think some
Some of
New
it,
Trek is,
yes.
but
Some of New Trek, I will give you that. But there's a lot more grim dark in the new stuff.
it's
and
heavier than it used to be. Yeah.
Mm.
But I mean, I think
to a degree that I don't like. That's not what I watch Star Trek for. I know
Yeah.
that it's just not. So when I see
no,
it, I'm like,
I agree.
like Strange New Worlds, great. Lower Decks, great. Some of the other stuff is just so deeply dark and disturbing, and that's again not what I can watch stuff that's for that. That's not what I tune into a Star Trek for. I tune into
and-
Star Trek
yeah.
to be uplifted.
It's you have to find your flavor. Entertainment is a Baskin Robbins. There are 31 flavors. There's going to be something there for everybody. You just have to find it. And some people are here for the grim dark and love it, want to revel in it. Some people want to dip their toes in it and have some fun with it. Some people want nothing to do with it. I like a
Look, I
balanced
will throw
diet
Shorzy in that
personally.
mix. I'll talk endlessly about Shorzy, but I don't know. Like Letterkenny is ridiculousness.
I was about to
For
say, is
those who
that the
don't,
Letterkenny spinoff?
it's the Letterkenny spinoff. It's the
Yeah.
best television I've watched in years.
Yeah.
Most recent season is in the in probably the top 5, maybe even the top 3 seasons of television I've ever seen. And I watch a lot of television
Yeah.
because it's my job. They took a character who was a walking your mom joke. They said, "Hey, we're making a spinoff." My first thought was like, yeah, that's gonna last more than 10 minutes. The first season was 6 episodes, half-hour episodes. They completely subverted the format of Letterkenny. They created one of the most interesting characters that I've seen. The show is brilliant. They had me sobbing by the end of it. It's one of the best sports shows. Like, it does all the things Ted Lasso did, but with cursing and and drinking and hockey and beating each other up. And then they just got better and better from there. And
Yeah.
the most recent season, the 3rd season, is so incredible. But it could have been nominated in comedy or drama. Like, they
Yeah.
do things that take it to both sides of that coin. And
Is it like
That's
is
what
it
the
is it like the Scrubs level where they'll have you laughing one second
Yeah.
and bawling the next?
yes,
Awesome.
because they've earned it. Whenever they're gonna make you cry,
Yeah.
they have earned it by making you laugh first, and you know you're gonna laugh again.
See, that I love.
I have an example that's kind of. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying that I love. That's the kind of media I enjoy. I don't want to feel like I'm in one constant state, and I have a massive issue with sympathetic embarrassment and sympathetic emotion. So, like, I can't watch Edward Scissorhands. It's too upsetting. I have to be kind of careful because if something is too dark and depressing, it'll just wipe me out. So the back and forth in one property makes me really, really excited and happy.
I wanted to give you guys, before we run completely out of time here.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
I want to give you guys an example of kind of an inverse of what you're talking about with Shorzy. That's significant. It's definitely a drama, but something I've seen recently, or at least some of recently, is a Star Wars show called Andor, which is
Andor's
just started
incredible.
right, which is
okay, you're in for a treat.
It's still grimdark, right? I'm not going to go into any spoilers or anything.
Okay.
It still is
I
grimdark.
don't care about spoilers anyways, but we have an audience, so.
Right. I'm not going to go into spoilers. It is grimdark, but it has the right moments of hope.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which you absolutely have to have in these stories that not every story that goes grimdark has.
I'll make a case that it's the best Star Wars we've gotten in recent memory. Like, it is so good, and it's also like a resistance playbook. They were like, we're gonna just slide this under the radar, just low key. Here's how you don't bring your cell phone. Like,
I am still bummed about Acolyte, and I don't think I'm ever gonna not be bummed about Acolyte getting canceled. I loved the flawed heroes, the sympathetic villains, the twists, I was kind of
so
good.
Disappointed. I was so disappointed to learn that that Andor just doesn't really have as. They got a second season.
Okay, I was gonna say I thought they were
their audience.
Really
their audience was extremely small compared to the previous shows. That apparently, for some reason.
Got it.
And like, despite the
which
fact
is
that
a
like,
tragedy, because
despite that there were people were
show.
regularly giving out Emmy-worthy performances in like at least half of the episodes.
Mhm.
Andy Serkis. Oh my god.
Or Stellan Skarsgård.
And so,
same episode. They both get monologues in the same episode.
That episode. Okay. Yes.
Okay.
Andor is incredible. But yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Before we run completely out of time, let's just briefly get your guys' opinion of the Mystic Mariners Academy itself. You guys have had a couple of episodes now to explore and kind of get an experience of. What do you guys think of the teachers, the kind of core principles that they seem to be delivering to you guys?
I kind of touched on it earlier, but I'll pop onto it again. I get the feeling that this school is more of a preparation, and you confirmed it earlier. It's more of a preparation for the real world than a intellectual education is kind of the vibe I've gotten off it. I think we're being instructed in skills and useful knowledge and things like that. But I've gotten this, and I don't know if this is just me misreading into it, but I've gotten this kind of undercurrent of sort of a hands-off kind of approach where they'll give you an understanding, then they will create a situation and put you into it, and hopefully you survive.
Sure. They're also trying to inspire as much paranoia as possible by constantly testing you.
Yeah.
In weird ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird because I mean, I never trust institutions in fantasy games. I'm always suspicious of things. And it doesn't seem like, I mean, I know we're fourth years, but it doesn't seem like there's any real protectiveness of the students.
Yeah.
And in a school that seems, even preparing students to go into the real world, like that seems very strange to me. Like, you don't want your students all dying. Just a random suggestion for a school. Like, you wouldn't want to put your students all at mortal peril.
Right.
That's fair.
Like,
although,
I don't feel like families would want to keep sending their kids. I don't think anyone would want to keep going to
look
that
at it
school
from
if everyone's dying.
I actually have two. Well, hold on. Has anyone died at the school? I don't think so far. Not in Europe.
Not so far, but you know, we're young.
Well, I mean, we talked about people getting pushed off the edge of the building and things.
Yeah, the pirates guys.
Yeah.
But even so, if it can happen to the pirates, why couldn't it happen to us?
Oh, I get what you're saying from that particular perspective. There actually is safeguards for that, but that's neither here nor there. Which you guys probably wouldn't have encountered, because I think, you guys probably wouldn't have encountered that anyway. You guys use the portal. But you're not wrong, and there are certain important. But yeah, also I like to look at it from this perspective, like the socioeconomic benefits of an adventuring academy. We talk about and this actually ties back into my inspirations for it, and we'll probably make this maybe the last note here.
Sure.
I'd say I watched the first movie of Harry Potter to get like just a general sense of this sort of magical school thing. But the truer inspiration, it's like a mixture of that with the Adventuring Academy from Dimension 20, I'd argue.
Okay.
Which is a little bit more about like literally preparing people to be adventurers. But the important part is adventurers become the world's equivalent of millionaires very quickly.
Yeah.
So if you have a long-lasting record of training people to become successful adventurers, people are very likely to, yes, there's risk involved.
Yeah.
But the reward is worth it to them.
Yeah.
At least that's my view on it. Now, I don't know.
So
if
it's purely capitalistic?
I don't know if it's purely capitalistic, because it's not just a matter of money. It's a matter of fame, achievement.
Well, but I would argue that still is like,
to some degree. It's a little bit like with was it, we were just talking about Star Trek earlier, where they said that like their focus isn't money, but accomplish, like I remember Picard had a moment, I think somewhere in TNG, I can't remember the episode, but he was talking about it was the one where they had the people in cryo sleep that were brought back from like 20th century. And he goes, he basically is like, we don't worry about money as much anymore. What we thrive on is achievement, ambition, and achieving those ambitions. So to some degree, it's a little bit of that for some people. I would bet for some people it is just straight up monetary, for sure.
Yeah.
Capital is purely capitalist. I mean, like Princess Spera is like a third son who would have amounted to nothing otherwise. So he's like, his family's like, all right, let's make you into an adventurer. At least you'll have some success doing something in the world.
Yeah.
The door just got shoved open. It was fully closed, and Stella walked in, and I don't know how she opened it. I am a little concerned.
What were you about to say?
I think it's interesting.
I think that would
it's
be
a little
something
bit,
interesting to explore in game.
yeah, I
For
mean,
sure,
it's a
that too.
little different, I think, than what I thought it was. So that does sort of change, like, I think that changes who I think would attend, because
Fair.
and why. I think that really changes the motivation of the people who would go there.
Mhm.
It's like
Which,
Charles comes from an extremely poor family in the Dwarven
Mhm.
Mountain Homes. No, near the Dwarven Mountains. He lives on the outskirts of
because
it.
it's very much sounding like a cross between an Ivy League school and
Mhm.
a like a for-profit scam college.
A little bit. I guess you
Um,
could say that a little bit. Yeah, maybe. I don't know
Like
if I would call it
Yale
a
it's a
and
scam
place
Trump
that's
college.
University had
it's
a baby.
yeah, it's like promising
Hmm.
fame and fortune, but actually not really providing the tools to achieve it.
Hmm. Well,
Oh, there's some
Which
great
is,
comments in chat, by the way.
yeah,
I,
chat's
I
been
oh,
great.
gotta give you guys props. Y'all are bringing up some wonderful points tonight.
I would love to. I would love to read. I turned off my other computer, my laptop, just in case it was causing my power issues. But
Yeah,
I'll say that is something we can definitely start to
yeah.
examine more closely. I feel like they
I mean,
mostly have
it's
good
interesting
intentions,
because
but
now I'm like, who would want to run a school like that? And that's I
why
mean,
would an
Look at
imp
who the
from
it's
the
such an
headmaster is. I'm
why
just
would an
saying.
imp from the seven hells want to run a
Yeah.
school like this? It's so weird.
well, but I mean, we had established that this is a world that doesn't necessarily have
That's fair too.
absolute.
This is true,
Yeah.
yeah.
So why? I mean, it feels like if Marlowe were a really truly evil being, that would have been
I don't think of him as
caught.
evil, so that'd be
Yeah.
fair.
Yeah, like if it was a truly kind of,
He's more trickster than he's more chaos than
yeah,
evil
but
for sure.
I could see a dragon wanting to
Mhm.
set that up so adventurers would go out and fail.
Yeah.
Like
That'd be
you're
interesting.
poorly training adventurers, so they're going to go out and not be able to succeed at coming and getting your
Well, here's
stuff.
the funny part. Here, actually, that you've finally brought me back to the memory of like part of the problem here. The the Mystic Mariners Academy was not originally an Adventurers Academy.
Oh,
20 years ago, there was a war that killed off most of the mages or most of the powerful mages in the world, and a lot of the mages academies shut down, and a lot of those were training adventurers in very much in the ways you're talking about, like sort of like we promise, power and influence and the ability to go out and gain your own riches. um and the Mystic Mariners Academy was mainly just about training people to like learn low level magics and sail the seas.
Mhm.
But because there were no other schools available, a lot of people congregated there, and since it was still around and not completely wiped out, they grew up into in the last 20 years or so into more of a adventurers academy. Kind of forgot about that a little bit until you brought it
yeah.
up,
I
and I was
mean,
like, oh yeah, that's true. It
it
is not their original purpose.
it seems like the people that it would attract would be at sort of cross purposes. I don't know.
I
What
think
makes
there's
it
I don't know.
interesting
definitely
to me is it almost gives it a feel of desperation. It's like a
it
school almost built
training the
on
next level,
desperation.
training the next generation of powerful mages
Yeah.
is extremely important to to a world that thrives off of magitech
Yeah.
already.
Yeah.
It's very, very important.
Yeah.
And all of the old schools were, like when the war started, the whole point of the war was to eliminate magic users in the world. So when the war started, they assassinated, as that was the declaration of war. All of the major mages, all of the important, well-developed, some of them hundreds of years old archmages were dead in one morning. And then the war
Oof.
starts. And so all these old schools fail because there's no longer the teachers around to teach in them. And the
Yeah.
one that's left behind is the one that barely teaches like cantrips and maybe a couple of level 1 spells.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
then
we're
they're
in
like,
year
well,
4 and we're just learning summoning.
yeah,
That actually explains a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really interesting because
it's a world
it's
in
a very
flux.
different. Yeah, it's a very different type of school than I thought it was.
Yeah, it's a
Because I
very
was
much
thinking of it as a university and like very much
Right.
a place that
They've been
people
around for a
who
while,
want
but
the higher levels of knowledge would go to study. I mean, certainly Riv was going to study for very specific
Yeah.
reasons and with very specific intentions. So if it's a place that's drawing power hungry people, and that's really kind of the only reason you attend, is to be trained to gain glory and
I feel like
power.
that's only true for some of the
it is.
attendees.
That's
like,
that was the point I was making
yeah.
earlier, that there are a lot of people attending for a lot of different reasons.
Yeah, like I don't
And
see Charles
they're
as being a power hungry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're
Well,
still
if he's
finding their purpose.
He's poor, it feels like, I mean, that's an interesting.
It puts an interesting twist on it. It really does, because
Because
it
it feels like
changes
so
the
often
motivation of
those schools that promise that glory and fame
Yeah.
will attract. I mean, this was all of the for-profit colleges. It's attracting people who are not wealthy and are
I love
wanting
that we
to elevate.
we have to examine the ethical ramifications of for-profit colleges now
Yes.
in the game.
I mean,
I love
This
that
is
we've gone from whale tongue circulation to the ethics
will-
of educational institutions.
Yeah, this is the kind of thing. Well, I mean, it wasn't until, I mean, I have my backstory for why the school exists, and that
Yeah.
it is certainly a school in flux.
Mhm.
Like, it is developing its purpose with a bunch of new staff that it didn't have 20 years ago. And it's been working, like, it's maybe like gotten 2 or 3 successful classes out in the last 20 years or so.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's still they're still trying to find their place.
Sim,
And a lot of it,
Oh, I'm sorry. I've got a question when you're done. Sorry.
they're still trying to find their place, and a lot of it is going to be in flux anyway. So they can be very hard to nail down because they don't really truly know what they are,
Mhm.
and they're working out their identity right now. Although I definitely see your intrinsic mistrust of institutions.
that may be just
We've-
my intrinsic mistrust of institutions in fantasy worlds, but you know.
We've got a question in chat that is actually kind of a good ending point, because it'll set us up nicely for next week's episode, I think. What is going on with the dwarves? It's unusual to have them as the designated evil, or at least that's what the radio seems to want people to believe.
I will say, and I can go into a little bit of detail here. For my world, the big good is the Hivernus, the Hivern Provincial Union, which is essentially a beast race a liberal democracy, made up of hobgoblins, goblins, animal races, Githzerai, and pretty much anyone you can think of that's not elf, dwarf, human, halfling, gnome, like the core fantasy races. Anyone who isn't that is probably from the southern continent. And what I really wanted to do was, and it's not entirely outside the realm possibly to have dwarves as your bad guys, but usually it's Duragar, not all dwarves. But I did kind of want to flip the script
Hashtag
on
not all dwarves.
Yes!
Yeah.
I'm glad I'm not the only person who thought
did.
of that.
I did want to flip the script a little bit, because people always portray goblins and hobgoblins as these inherently evil creatures that always just run these like bestial, at best empires, mostly warlords, and just work evil and everything. And I was like, nah, they're the good guys. It's these dwarves that are being assholes. We're actually, the dwarves are my critique of capitalism, because they are run by megacorps.
Porthy Balin.
Yeah, and Porthy Balin shipping and freight is definitely going to show up, and are definitely the West and East India companies of the Dwarven Mountain Homes.
This is completely off topic and not related to the game at all, but do we get to do the train heist on Saturday?
I don't think it's going to be on Saturday. I don't think it'll be next Saturday.
We
You
get
guys
to
still
do a
gotta
train
plan for
heist
it.
in the other game against Porthy Balin, and I am so excited.
Yeah, that's fair. I love heists. I hope you guys get to do
So
a heist.
excited.
Heists are
but-
awesome.
I think, because I know we need to take our break under normal circumstances. We would be taking a break we would have taken it 10 minutes ago. I think it's a good place for us to leave off here.
Yeah.
Were there any other pressing questions in chat? I don't have the chat open, so I just want to double check.
I've been keeping an eye. I don't think I missed
I
any.
haven't seen any other ones.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So,
Well, then
I
think
didn't have
we're
my
good.
contacts in, so that's why I keep like leaning in like this and disappearing.
I'm gonna recredit our cartography by Shane Peku, cartography by Shane Peku Sci-Fi, maps by Luke Stratton, maps by Eightfold Paper, music by Tabletop Audio, character tokens by Greek46. Thank you to our moderators.
We want to thank our moderators, Billith and Strike Redkite.
And thank you, Katie and Jennifer,
Thank you,
sh-
Sumerian.
Thank you, Sam.
for showing
And
up
thank you,
having-
everyone who came and spent
and
time
having
with us.
this.
this
And
week.
thank you.
We
Um,
did get a
our
really
Idle
nice
Champions
compliment.
code. Our Idle Champions code will go out on Twitter hopefully this week. We
Yes,
apologize again.
I've already
for
emailed
that.
them and asked them if they could provide us a new one that we can put out on Twitter. So keep an eye on Players in Book on Twitter, Blue Sky, and all the socials.
All the places.
All the places. Just check
All
the
right.
places.
Well, that's bonus action covering roughly our July episodes. Was it July? August episodes.
Yes, August.
I guess we're into September.
August episode.
Which how?
Time is an
How?
illusion to help things make sense. I don't understand it. And with that, I'd like to say, do we want to? Does it actually? Before I go, do either of you guys have anyone you want to shout out or any projects you want to shout out?
Let's just plug for Lauren and Latia. Lauren is doing on Dungeon Scrawlers channel on Wednesday mornings at 10 a.m. or Kira plays Baldur's Gate 3 and it's spectacular.
I'm
It's so
sorry,
much
she's
fun.
doing Orkira Plays?
She's Kira plays. So she's playing through Baldur's Gate as Kira. It's amazing.
Oh, you
it's
missed
so
that
much
last
fun.
session when she was talking about it. Yeah.
It's so good. And Latia's doing all the things Latia does. Oh, and Lauren has a Tuesday night Humblewood game, and I can't remember what channel, but check
our
Lauren's
socials.
channel.
We'll post them.
Yeah.
We have a
Um,
website now, don't we?
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's ready.
Are we-
Playersinbook.com. Check it out. I built it on my phone.
Yay!
In fact,
we'll get
actually,
links to
while
that
we're
in-
still on air, I want to
Yeah.
check and see if the plugin is working.
The plugin?
Yeah, I've got a plugin. Here we go. Actually, people can see it. Let's see. Is it working? Oh, look at that. It is. How cool
Hey,
is
it's
that?
us.
It's us. Yay. But yeah, playersinbook.com. Check it out. We've got all
Nice.
sorts of things
So
on there.
cool.
All right. Well, I still don't have an outro, so don't die. And we'll see you next week.
Bye, everybody.